research question is, what impact does overpopulation have on global climate change? In a quote by Margaret Thatcher from her speech to the United Nations, she says, to put in its bluntest form, the main threat to our environment is more and more people and their activities. The land they cultivate ever more intensively, the forests they cut down and burn, the mountainsides they lay bare, the fossil fuels they burn, and the rivers and seas they pollute. And this led me to my claim that overpopulation plays a negative role in global climate change. In fact, these two often play hand in hand with each other, so when one goes up, so does the other. So what does it really mean to be overpopulated? To be overpopulated is when the number of existing humans exceeds carrying capacity of the Earth. So this involves more the environmental sustainability, so there are enough resources to sustain the population. Some causes of overpopulation are declining death rate, better medical facilities, more hands to overcome poverty, technological advancements in fertility treatment, immigration, and lack of family planning. As you can see in this graph of the world population, it first begins to increase in year 1700 at a population of 600 million. This is not even twice the current population of the United States. But we fast forward 300 years from now and we are already at 7.7 billion. Now, global warming is the gradual increase of temperature due to greenhouse effects. Now, this is very important because this is only one aspect of climate change, as climate change refers to the overall change in climate patterns, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a rise in temperature. And this is very significant to our everyday lives because the more carbon emissions we release, which is part of greenhouse gases, the higher these temperatures will be. In this graph, you see that as CO2 concentration goes up, so does the global temperature. Now, this greenhouse effect we're talking about occurs when gases in Earth's atmosphere trap the sun's heat, and it's basically part of the atmosphere that keeps our Earth warm. And this isn't always a bad thing. In fact, we need greenhouse gases to keep our Earth warm. But when we have too many of these, we have the negative effect of the depletion of the ozone layer. Now, the ozone layer is what helps us protects us from UV lights, but the more greenhouse gases we emit is going to deplete that. And these greenhouse gases do not just disappear. In the Industrial Revolution, all that carbon emissions that were released, half of those still remain in our atmosphere today. This is the greenhouse gas emission from just 2017, and you can see that carbon dioxide takes up 82% of that. And these are harmful to our atmosphere. If we look at the annual emissions per person, in this graph you can see that China is actually low on the spectrum, so compared to Western countries. So China would actually be considered very carbon efficient. We see that the United States, Britain, Germany, and France combined is only equal to a third of China's population. And so, again, it would seem that China is very carbon efficient. But as we can see in this graph, because of China's population, that efficiency per person means nothing, as they are still leading in the greatest amount of greenhouse emissions. Now, some solutions to this could possibly be slowing population growth, as this would naturally help to lower carbon emissions. In China's one-child policy rule, it was considered effective as it did help prevent 400,000 births. The cons of this would be that trying to control population over the entire world may not be effective, and it would be really hard to regulate. And in the case of China, it did result in skewed sex ratios because they wanted the boys to carry on the legacy, and this could happen throughout the entire world. Another possible solution is implementing environmental regulations. Of course, this would be a secure and effective solution to stopping global warming. The only problem with this, though, is that getting these regulations passed would be extremely hard. And although they are immediate solutions, actual results would be very time-consuming. And probably the most effective way we can do this is by raising awareness and gaining support. We can't solve a problem we don't know about, and so we need the elites in our society, such as politicians, celebrities, to tell us it is important, to influence us to think it is important. And we can do this such as through commercials and So I'm just super excited. I got to actually like put in this.
Okay, couple of questions for you, Jaden. The first one is, what information did you need before you began your research? And then how did that information shape your research?
So the information I really needed before was what global warming and overpopulation was, because there are so many misconceptions, such as between global warming and climate change, as well as between overpopulation and being overcrowded.
And then how did that help shape your research?
It helped shape my research because it opened up me to so many different perspectives, like helped me think that, China is overpopulated and overcrowded, but there are some other countries that maybe, they have considerably what is less crowded, but because their population is so big, they cannot sustain it.
And then your other question is, what additional questions emerged from your research, and why are these questions important?
So some additional questions that came from my research were on what scale would we have to implement such regulations? Because I know in Switzerland, I believe, Greta Thunberg talked about how her country implemented these laws and they are just barely underneath what is being regulated. And so trying to do that on a world scale, trying to figure out what regulations would need to be made and how fast they would have to be.